update on election security in Kootenai County and the state of Idaho. What can be done for Idaho or Kootenai County to lead the nation and go all paper ballots, no machines, in voting and counting our votes? And so the question, another question was, why not paper ballots? So Joe, you're on.
Why not paper ballots? I like paper ballots. I don't have a problem with paper ballots, and I would like us to get there. I don't see that happening in the near future, frankly. I have had 3 meetings with the Secretary of State's office regarding election integrity issues. One of the things that we presented to them was the results of some canvassing that was done by our friends here. They're all in the audience. I don't want to point them out individually, but they did some canvassing in the last several months regarding those that are registered to receive absentee ballots, and we found a 50% error rate. 50%, 50, not 15, 50 error rate on the people that were requesting absentee ballots. And those errors included things such as people had died, people had not lived there for several years. There were multiple people registered at one particular location, not one, many locations, 5, 6 people at an address who had not lived there for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Wrong names. So now some of this is logical if you consider fat fingers, people entering data. So you've got 2 names at an address, and one name is the right name, the other name is the wrong name because somebody fat fingered it as they were entering it. So there are some legitimate things, but I think a 50% error rate is something to be very, very concerned about. The Secretary of State's office advised me that they clean the election rolls every, ready for this, 4 years. And they're due to clean the rolls in March of this year. We also know that approximately 6% of the population across the state moves every year. So 6 by 4 is 24, if my math is right. I was in homeschool, so I may be wrong on that. But you've got approximately a quarter of the ballots that we know, or registrants in a district that we know don't live there anymore. And they're not being cleaned. Yes, I've seen some of this on my own. So we have that data, and I presented it to the Secretary of State's office. I will tell you there's pushback on it. My absentee ballot bill is not supported by the Secretary of State's office. So this is going to be a very long process. We are going to need community involvement to get them to understand that we are concerned about the veracity of the people that are registered to vote. I mean, we think there are issues. We know there are issues. How we fix it? Several ways. One is, as I mentioned, the absentee ballot issue. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to remove affidavit voting. I have a bill on that. There's already a bill been presented through State Affairs, and that would eliminate that you get to go and show up on election day and say, I'm John Green and I really do exist, and I'm going to vote. I'm sorry, John is here.
I know.
I just picked the name out. I'm sorry. Joe Smith, whatever it is. So that's going to solve one problem, but we're going to have to nip at this a little bit at a time until we get this fixed, and until we get to the point where we can be assured of a clean election. Paper is a goal down the road, but I'll tell you, it's not going to happen in the next year or 2.
Nope.
Cindy Carlson and I are, she's a member of the Senate, we're working on some election integrity bills that relate to voting machines. So yesterday we got done early, and I drove home, and she and I met with the county clerk in Adams County. Adams County has about 2,500 registered voters. They get about 12 to 1,500 out at an election, and they hand count their ballots. They're all paper ballots. They don't use a voting machine. And they need 43 people to do the hand counting. And then Sherry Wood is the name of the clerk there. She said she talked to Phil McGrain, and he said if they did paper ballots that were hand counted in Ada County, they need 2,800 people to do it. So somehow we have to find a sweet spot there. I had an idea that if a ballot goes through a voting machine, it's getting scanned, why not just put all those ballots up on the internet and let the citizens see all the ballots, and we can do our own hand counts if we want to. So that's an idea I floated around. I'm gonna continue to work on it, but I have a bill that's gonna require any software used to count votes on ballots to be open source software. And then I also want the ballots timestamped in the voting machine. And then Cindy's bill is dealing with the guts of the machine, and she wants those parts either to be manufactured or at least programmed in the United States and not in China. So.
And if I could add one more thing, maybe this is significant. The first bill that was introduced in the House this year was post-election audits requirements. And you know, perhaps you know that a bill was introduced a year or two ago requiring selective audits of elections after the canvassing was done, the verification was done. But that audit was basically to do exactly what the election staff had done before, which was to run the equipment, run the ballots through the machines again, which is really not an audit if you're doing exactly what you did before. It's not a second check. But this bill, introduced by Representative Young, requires a paper count in that audit process, a paper hand count in that audit process. So it's only four audits that will be done per election, but that is a step forward.
So, I'm an escapee from the occupied zones, and I'm sure a fairly good number of folks in here are also. Down there, that would be California. Once you filled out for an absentee ballot, it was good to go. We got up here and we had to do it on a yearly basis, and I said, that makes so much sense, because people do move, people do die, etc. I'm curious as to how those numbers could be that screwed up if you have to submit a request for an absentee ballot every year. How do, you know, they've been dead 4 or 5 years, unless there's absolute fraud going on, are not those signatures cross-checked when those requests come in?
In theory.
Say again?
In theory, they are checked. It's going to vary by elections office. That's just the reality of it. We're dealing with data, and I really believe that we don't necessarily have the data experts to really verify what we're doing. I think what's happening is that people who are clerks are assigned, and I'm not trying to demean anyone, but people who are clerks are given the responsibility for doing some things that they don't necessarily know how to do, and they're supposedly trained to do it, but I don't think the level of expertise is there. And I know, for example, Secretary McGrain has asked for, in his budget proposal this year, a data expert to come in and help on the rolls, because he's aware of the issue as well.
And I may add, this whole idea of the electronic signature that we've been doing, there is no way that matches the signature on my...
That's right.
And I asked, when I went to vote, how do you verify this signature? And it's like, oh, we don't verify that signature. So I don't know what's going on. We may talk to Jennifer about it at some point, but there's no way my electronic signature is anything like my regular signature. It just doesn't work that way.
Okay. Thank you.